Test, test, one. Oh, there we go. Okay. So mute should be off when you speak, is that? I'm such a great scientist. It's kind of funny, I was telling everybody they should go out and look at the blood moon, and I got the day wrong. So somebody said, oh, wasn't it awesome last night? And I said, no, it's on the 15th, and today's the 15th, so it'll be tonight. And they're like, no, Andy, it was 3 in the morning on the 15th, the night of the 14th. And I'm like, you know, God has ways of just keeping you really humble about stuff, I guess. Tonight I want to talk about this blood moon phenomena, but those of you who know me know that's not really what I'm going to talk about. Okay, but I want to talk about that thing, but I want to help us get our eye on the ball. I want to help us to go, okay, I get it. And so I picked a title that might be a little provoking. So is it End Times Blood in the Sky or God just having fun with the heavens? You know, and those are sort of the two far ends of things. But for those of you who haven't thought much about this, so this is what you probably saw yesterday. Okay, and so you have the moon passing through the shadow of the earth, and that shows you the times and what you have. And then I guess I should have brought my pointer. It's going to be really disrupted at the beginning. Okay, I have a pointer right here. Ta-da. So here's the earth and there's the moon. It's not to scale. I'll show you the scale in a minute. And so the earth shadow it's like a target, so it's got a bullseye in it, and then it's got an outer part. So this is the umbra, which is the middle. That's the darkest part. And then the penumbra is this loop around there. And so the moon passed through the shadow of the earth. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about. But what we're really talking about, and what has been sort of making it across the internet and on the airwaves, the New York Times did a story on it, and NBC and CNN, is this phenomena. And it's called a tetrad, or a lunar tetrad. And the tetrad is when you have 4 total lunar eclipses, which are sometimes called blood moons. But what that means is that the totality of the moon goes into the umbra, into the very center, and it looks red. And it looks red for the exact same reason a sunset looks red. That is, the light from the sun is shifted to the red as it goes through the dust and the atmosphere of the earth, and then that red light keeps on going and hits the moon. So the moon looks red. Right in the middle, on Nisan 1, which is the first day of the religious Jewish New Year, there's a total solar eclipse. And then on Rosh Hashanah, which is Tishri 1, which is the first day of the civil year, and we'll talk about this in just a minute. I'm just kind of giving you a heads up what we're going to look at. There's a partial solar eclipse. So what have you got? You've got 4 blood moons, and you have 2 solar eclipses. And if you're thinking about scripture kinds of stuff, then you will see that God associates blood moons and eclipses with things that have to do with the end times. And so, for example, you have Joel, he's talking, and then you have Peter right after the Holy Spirit has fallen. And Peter says, this is that which was spoken of through Joel. And he quotes the moon turning to blood and the sun being darkened. And basically, there was a blood moon when Christ was crucified, and there was a darkening of the sun, as we know, in the afternoon, sort of unexplained. And so Peter goes back to Joel, and what he's really saying is, this is that thing. But as you know, prophecy always kind of lands on several mountain peaks over time, right? So the prophets look out and they see this happening, and then that is the type of what's going to happen later. And so there's an initial fulfillment and an ultimate fulfillment. So Peter's saying, this is that Holy Spirit. And that blood moon and that darkening of the sky is a type of what Joel was talking about in the end times. Okay, so Peter is doing that, right? And then you've got Jesus talking, so the ultimate authority on when he's coming back other than the Father. He kind of knows when the Father says, okay, pack your bags, it's going to be soon, right? But he doesn't know the day or the hour. And so Jesus, look, immediately after, and I've golded up the things that talk about time, okay? Because eventually all that will be important. But Jesus says, look, immediately after the tribulation of those days, then the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light. And then you look here and the sixth seal is opened, and you see a great earthquake, the sun is dark, the full moon becomes like blood. So full moon becoming like blood is a full solar eclipse. The powers of the heavens are shaken, the stars of the sky fell to earth. And so you go, well, that may be what he was talking about. There's a lot of similarities there. And then if you really think hard about it, you go, oh, yeah, but wait, what about? And so it's not, if it were just dead clear, then we'd all know. But it's not dead clear, so we don't all know. Right? Because he doesn't really want us to be that well informed. He wants us to be observant and expectant. Right? Right? It's kind of like God never sends anybody to Nepal. God says, I'm going to Nepal, want to come. Right? God says, I'm concerned about Egypt, so let's go to Egypt, Moses. If you go because God sends you, then where's God? God has to go with you. God always invites you into what he's doing. He doesn't send you to go do things. He invites you. So Jesus said, I only do what I'm seeing the Father doing. And if we want to be like Jesus, that's how we should live. Okay? So these guys are going because God is saying, I'm going to Nepal to have an adventure with you, so you need to be there. Otherwise, how can I have an adventure with you in Nepal? And so off they go to Nepal. There's also stuff about the rapture, or some people call it the third coming, right? So there is a time when the Lord will descend, we will be changed, we'll meet him in the air, we'll go to heaven, and then at some point, we'll come back with him, riding on horses. So I probably need 3.5 years to learn, horsemanship, because I've been on horse twice and fell off once. So, and so there is this rapture thing going on. And so when you think about all of this thought process, the idea is sort of this then. And that is that there have been 4 tetrads since 1492 that have fallen on the feast days of Israel. And so they fall on Passover, Tabernacles, Passover, Tabernacles. Okay? Passover, Tabernacles. Okay? Now, Passover, okay, so just keep that in mind. So here we are, 1492, big deal for Israel. Right? The Jews are kicked out of Spain. They have 2 weeks to leave. They find this guy, Christopher Colombo, and they say, find us a world that we can live in. He thinks he's maybe going to the Far East, funded by them. He finds America, and America has become a very safe haven for Jews. Okay? So, they find safety. 1948, they find a nation. 1967, they find Jerusalem. So we go finding a safe nation to back to our country to getting Jerusalem back. So you see that's kind of going on with these tetrads. So now we have this next one that's happening, another tetrad, just like those other 3. And so you can imagine the hubbub that's going on around in the Messianic community and the end times community. And so everyone is on high alert, right? Because not everyone. We'll see who isn't. But because this is happening. And so the thinking goes like this. These tetrads are God's sign concerning Israel. Blood moons tend to be, the theory is, about Israel, and solar eclipses tend to be about the world. Okay, that's sort of the theory. I don't know if that follows, but that's what people tend to say. And so some people have said, John Hagee, for example, with his best-selling book, right? Something big is about to happen. Keep your eyes on Israel. Something big is about to happen. People say, well, if we have this narrowing down, the only thing that's left is the temple. They don't have the Temple Mount yet. So maybe what we need is a tetrad that will wind up with the Temple Mount. See, what happened with Israel is conflict, blessing, 1492. Conflict ending in blessing, 1948. Conflict ending in blessing, 1967. So people are saying, I would look for conflict that ends with Israel having the Temple Mount. Okay, so that is a theory. So people are going, okay, so keep your eyes open. That might. Okay, why? Because they're looking at the trend, right? They're extrapolating the trend. And so some people go so far as to say, well, what's left but the end times? What's left but the tribulation? What's left but the rapture? We're there. We're at the door. Jesus is at, right? So that's the hubbub that's going on. So some early observers of this, Mark Blitz, for example, and some other early observers began predicting days of the rapture and hours, not hours, and saying, there's something coming. Okay? So, is there? That's the question. Some people then, mostly science guys like me, go, well, it's not just those four, but look, they fit into this whole pattern that is perfectly balanced, and this is like the tipping point, the pivot of history. God is pivoting. And so you can see all the days in the counting, and so somebody did a lot of work from the NASA eclipse site. Okay, and so everybody is noticing patterns. Maybe they're certainly seeing patterns, right? It's kind of like when you look at a cloud and you go, oh, look, it's a dog. God put a dog in the sky, and you go, okay, did he really? Or right? Because right. So that's where. So we go, well, that looks. It's 1461. Everything is so ordered. Everything is so ordered. What a coincidence. Okay? Unless you're a scientist. Then you go, well, of course. Okay? And here's the same sort of a thing for solar eclipses. It's so ordered. So this guy's got, he's got the 3.5 years. We've got mid-trib. We've got tribulation starting in 2012. And so this is from about 10 years ago. And so people have started doing these predictions, right? Because of the signs in the heavens and because of the patterns that they see. And so they have started to do this. So here's the problem. See, I have two brains. I have a really prophetic right brain, and I have a really scientific left brain. And so I don't have two little angels on my shoulder. I have like Darwin and whoever that guy, And so I go, okay, so we've got seers and scientists, and they struggle with each other, and I'm trying to figure out as an Ivy League science guy, and as this prophetic wacko, what I think. Right? So you can see the struggle. Because I don't want to be left behind. Okay, so it's like... And so we have this series on scientists. So what I want to do is to help you think through what is happening and to give you both a seer and a science view to help bring some inner balance and some insight, and to give you a message about this when you're talking to friends, to go, now you go to one of those churches, right? Now what are you guys thinking about all this, right? So to give you a message that's life-changing. So here's ditch number one. Nothing is happening, right? So Peter says, look, in the days, mockers will come. So you go on late night, and there's, I guess I'm packing my bag, Jesus, and there's, ha, 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 ha. And then you have a learned science person who goes, well, Bob. And then he gives a long scientific explanation as to why this is happening and how it's perfectly predictable and blah, blah, blah. And so you hear that, right? And when it stops being factual but open and starts being mostly factual and mocking, they've gone in the ditch, right? Because fact plus attitude is in the ditch. Okay? And that is, everything is happening. Everything is God. There's this, well, look, he's here. Well, look, that's God. This is God. That's God. God's here. God's here. You know, and it's like, stop. You know, I don't think God is that great. You know, I don't know. And so you have these two ditches where it's the seer and the scientist both gone to seed. Okay, they've started down their own path, and they only talk to people like themselves, and so they begin circling around themselves, and pretty soon they're off in some asteroidal orbit, you know, in the Oort cloud, sort of missing maybe the truth that God's trying to bring. So let's ground ourselves a bit. God has two purposes for the heavens. The first purpose is to show His glory. He wants us always and forever to walk out and go, will you look at that? Oh my gosh, look at that. Look at that. Look at those constellations. Whoa. Okay, He wants us always and forever to look up and have our jaws stay down. You know. Okay, and he said that in the Old Testament, and He said it in the New Testament. The heavens are telling the glory of God. For since pagans can know that there's a God by looking up. God just said, look, I have so situated the heavens that if you get out of the city, you'll be awestruck. Okay? If you'll turn off the streetlights. He also has a second purpose for the heavens. Show His glory and tell His story. He said in Genesis 1, I think 14, He said, let the heavens be for signs and for epochs, for days and for years. So days and years is a calendar. And a sign is something that points to a greater reality. Right? So house of blessing sign isn't the church, and it isn't the house of blessing. It's a sign that points to something greater. So that's what a sign is. The word epochs is funny because it has two translations. One is it establishes the feasts of Israel. It's a word that says it's a demarker for God's feasts. But it's got another meaning which means that it is a marking point for the turning of God's administration on earth. So He says, I'm going to begin doing something different. And so when you see that happen in the heavens, know that something different, I'm going to start doing something differently. Okay? And so Jesus says, there will be signs in the heavens before I come back. Now, the first time, we had pagans from the east, Zoroastrian pagans from the east, a frightened and faithful young woman, a couple old people retired in the temple, and some shepherds, probably drunk, or so people thought. Those were the only ones who got His first coming right. Everybody else missed it. The signs were visible to all the earth. And 3 or more wise men were the only ones who got it. They come to Jerusalem saying, where's the one-born King of the Jews? You must be partying. And everybody's going, the who? Excuse me? They go to Herod. Where's the one-born King of the Jews? And he goes, I'm the King of the Jews. We've got to kill this kid. Can you imagine the insanity? There's signs in the heavens that somebody's born, and you're going to try to kill that one? Herod, get a grip. How insane can you be? How insane can we be? So Satan has two counterfeit purposes for the heavens. And I just have to warn us that these don't look counterfeit when you listen to them. The first counterfeit is to steal His glory by having the heavens take on their own glory. Right? People begin to think maybe the heavens themselves influence what's happening on earth. They don't. Okay? They don't. Except when you look at it and you go, man, that's awesome. And you're influenced. Did I just... Oh, okay, I'm good. Steal His glory, and so we look up in the heavens, and to tell your story. See, the other thing is, there is this thing where we think maybe the stars talk about us. Can you imagine just how selfish that is? and crazy that is? The stars don't talk about us. They tell his story. And so, is this a propitious day? I don't know. Ask God. Okay? So, here's the deal. God named the stars. Adam named the animals. A lot more stars. God said, no problem. I will give them meaningful names. You give the animals meaningful names. Josephus said that God told Seth and Enoch the names of the stars, and they were passed down. A woman named Ralston in 1850 did a cross-cultural study and found that every single culture she studied had the same root names for all the stars. Totally different names for the animals, same root names for the stars. Crazy. Crazy. The name zodiac is found in the book of Job. God is not afraid to look at the zodiac. He's afraid we'll look at it and think it's about us. If I were Satan, this is what I would do. I would make all non-Christians look at the stars and try to get horoscopes, and all Christians so afraid to look at the stars they never do. Then I've won. I have created this double bind where the people who will be misled look and the people who should know the truth don't look. And that's what's happened. Okay? Abraham, supposedly, one of the reasons he was so welcome in Egypt is he brought all the star lore with him to Egypt. And so then they began this whole study of the stars, and they told the world, and then we go this funny game of telephone over 5 centuries and 6 cultures. And today then we have multiple names for constellations and for stars and for the meanings of stars because people pass them down. It split east and west when the Greeks took over. The Greeks, you think God would name something Hercules? I don't think so. Okay, so the Greeks began to rename some things. And so things in the heavens have gotten confusing, including the planets and the moon and the purposes of all of those. So God's intention was distorted across the centuries and across the cultures. But God doesn't change his intention. He still says, I named the stars. And when I spun those things out, I knew the day and the hour that my son would be born. And I set it up. And I know the day and the hour he's coming back. And it's already set in motion. Back then, the Magi, of whom Daniel was the chief of the Magi when he was around, they had pretty incredible abilities to predict things in the heavens. In fact, they found a contraption petrified in the bottom of the ocean that comes from about 1000 BC that some professor rebuilt it with all the gears, and when you turn it, everything rotates at exactly the right speed. The whole heavens, all the planets. Okay? This is from 1000 BC. So they had a pretty good handle. A really good handle as well. Okay, so here we are. And so now we have these blood moons, and now I hope you kind of get, okay, so God has purposes for these things. And so then theories abound. The year is 999 AD, December 31st. The Pope, and I forget his name, maybe Gregory, but the Pope commissions a procession in St. Peter's, this is Y1K, a procession that will touch the altar at the stroke of midnight because for sure Jesus is coming back. For sure. Can you imagine the downer? Duh. Y'all just go home. Oh, I mean, it's like, okay, Martin Luther thought it was going to happen his time. Cotton Mather thought it was going to. So there have been theories. Who grew up with Hal Lindsey, late great Planet Earth? Life was filled with guns and war and everywhere. Remember? Okay. So I want to do one with you, and I want you to watch what happens, okay? So I kind of pieced together a theory that I thought made tons of sense. So here we are. Revelation 12 is right in the middle of the book of Revelation, and I thought I'd pick one where a sign appears in heaven because we can do that, okay? So here's a sign. A woman clothed in the sun with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She's pregnant. She cries out with pain. She gives birth to a child. The dragon comes. Okay, all this stuff happens. This is right in the middle of the book of Revelation. And we can observe this in the heavens. Okay, it appeared in the heavens. This, like every other prophecy, has several parts. So this is obviously a picture of the birth of Christ. But it's happening in the middle of the book of Revelation, so it's obviously got a secondary application in the book of Revelation. So what happened with the birth of Christ was a type of what is going to happen at that time in the book of Revelation. Okay, so you with me? So let's go back and see what happened at the birth of Christ. So here we have Earth, Venus, and Jupiter, and they are in conjunction. This is what the wise men see in the rising, and go to andyreese.org and you can get the DVD for, I don't know, it's real cheap. So they see this in the rising. So we're August 12th, 3 BC. No, they didn't have August back then, okay, but this is. And so everything starts to go into motion. And so Jupiter goes into conjunction with Regulus. And Jupiter goes back and forth. So you have the king star and the king planet. And so you can see as the planets are going around, the perfect timing of God. There's the third conjunction. So they have started moving. And here we are. They are now heading to Bethlehem. And the exact thing they see, Venus and Jupiter lined up, they see that evening as they're heading to Bethlehem and making an escape. And so God set all this up. So perfect timing. So Jupiter and Venus are lined up on top of each other, so they're the brightest thing in the sky except the moon. And that alignment only happens once every 400 years or so, except this year it happened twice. Okay, because of the weird way everything works in the heavens. And here's what the heavens looked like on that birthday, Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets, September 3 BC. So you have a woman, Virgo, clothed in the sun, the moon at her feet, and a crown or a garland of 12 stars over her head. Okay, now, there's only 9 stars over her head. Most of the time, that's Leo, 9-star constellation, except when 3 planets show up. So what Revelation is saying is, maybe, is there has to be 3 planets, and that doesn't happen but ever so often. And so I'm telegraphing when this might be, right? So here it is. This is the birthday of Christ, Rosh Hashanah. Feast of Trumpets, the coming of the King. Or so I say. Okay? It's pretty airtight, let me tell you. So God's going to intersect history again, right? At some point, all the scientists will be wrong. Because he will show up. And every scientist who says, this is nothing, they'll go, okay, this one actually is something. Okay, I mean, so at some point, so the seers are mostly wrong, but they'll be right once. The scientists are mostly right, but they'll be wrong once. Okay? And everything, you get where I am? Okay, so everything will switch. It's going to happen. So Jesus says, this is going to happen. And so the question is then, we need some wise men. Right? We need people who can interpret. We maybe don't need men at all. Actually, if we just had 3 wise women. Think for Mary. Mary would have appreciated a couple of women with casseroles a lot more than, gold myrrh and frankincense. I mean, what am I going to do with this myrrh? Hamburger would be better, but here we are. Okay, so moving right along, God telegraphs his intentions. Okay? So, for example, when he says to David, know for certain. I'm fading in and out. Do you know why that is? Yes. No. He says, look, from the decree to build Jerusalem till Messiah, there's going to be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, 69 weeks of years. And if you do the math from Artaxerxes in March of 444 BC, you land on Palm Sunday when Jesus marches into Jerusalem. Kabam! To the day. To the day. If that doesn't make you a believer, You're just not thinking. I mean, lucky guess? I mean, what? Here we go. God says to Abraham, know for certain you're going to be enslaved 400 years. 400 years, 1446 BC, they come out of Egypt. God telegraphs. So the question then for us is God telegraphing when his next return will be? You'd think that'd be pretty important, right? Okay, now we're doing a theory. Okay, so this is Andy's theory. Okay, so, but I'm convincing you so far, right? Okay, so Israel will be led captive into all the nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot. When? Until what happens? Till the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. When was Jerusalem not trampled underfoot? 1967. From 70 AD, remember they said, Jesus, when will the temple be destroyed, and when will be the sign of your coming? So Jesus moves back and forth between 70 AD and the end times, okay? Like every prophet, he's in one sentence, he talks about three things, okay? And doesn't tell you. 1967. So now we got to ask ourselves this question. So Jesus says, so when you see all these things happening, same paragraph, same Luke 21, he says, I say to you, this generation, the generation that sees this happen, will not pass away until everything I've said takes place. Right? I mean, that would be a logical deduction from that. So let's ask this question then. Typically in Jewish culture, a 30-year-old is the generation that's up on stage. They're like in action. Jesus is 30, he goes into action. So the 30-year-olds are like where it's happening. That's the generation that's doing stuff historically. It's not that other people don't, but that's like the generation, okay? So if you're 30 in 1967, I went and looked in the actuarial tables, and your average lifespan is 80 years if you were 30 in 1967. Which means that 1967 plus 50 more years makes it 2017. Most of the generation will have passed away by 2017. If what I'm saying is true, this generation will not pass away until you see these things fulfilled. And by 2017, the generation that was in charge in 1967 will have mostly passed away. Then let's just theorize that 2017 is a pretty important year. Okay, so let's go back to Revelation 12. She gave birth to a male child, blah, 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 blah. And God prepares a place for her for 1,260 days. So that is 3.5 lunar years. Okay, so 3.5. And so in Revelation 11, 12, and 13, God says 3.5 years, 3.5 years, there's 3.5 years to go. Okay, so we know we're probably in the middle of a 7-year tribulation period, middle of Daniel's 7th week. Revelation 12 is probably in the middle. Okay, so here we are, Revelation 12, a woman clothed in the sun, the moon at her feet. So there's Jupiter. Now watch Jupiter in this animation. So there's that same woman clothed in the sun. This is Rosh Hashanah, 2016. I'm going to let the time run for a year, and I want you to watch Jupiter. Remember that she struggles to give birth. Remember that Jupiter was the star at his first birth. So here we are. So let me start making time advance. So ready? It's 2016, October 3rd, which is Rosh Hashanah in 16. Okay, so watch what happens. Now watch Jupiter. Jupiter goes into her belly, and the picture is a little out of line. That should be down there. Jupiter goes into her womb. Now watch Jupiter. Jupiter's in her womb. So here we are, 1222. Jupiter is in her womb. How long does it take to give birth? Yeah, okay. So now watch. Watch time. So now it's January. Jupiter stays in her womb. February. March. Jupiter's going backwards in her womb. Kicking in her womb. Struggling in her womb. 2017. Everything else is going forward, but Jupiter is going backward. It's called retrograde. Jupiter stays in her womb. It's June, July, August, September. Jupiter is given birth and basically comes out of the birth canal on Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets, 2017. And look what you've got. A woman clothed in the sun, the moon at her feet, and watch this, 12 stars. There's the 9 for Leo, plus Mercury, Mars, and Venus. All stars. This is the first year that this happens since 3 BC. Yep. Okay, and I'm building a theory. Okay, you with me? See, I'm convincing you. Okay, so we'll just clear everything out, and so we'll fit. So you see, so this isn't Andy making this up. This is a computer program that shows what the heavens are. That is exactly what's going to happen. Jupiter will be in the womb of Virgo, the same sign at his first birth for 9 months. Okay, then Jupiter, and there's 3 other planets to make a garland of 12 stars. Okay, so let's keep going. So here we have the book of Revelation, and we have the letters to the churches at one end. We have the new creation at the other end. We have potentially 2 3.5-year periods. We have Revelation 11, 12, and 13 sitting in the middle. And if we're a pre-trib rapture believer, then the rapture will take place 3.5 years before 2017, right? It'll take place, right? Because 2017 is in the middle of the book of Revelation. Yeah, you know where I'm going. So, 1,260 days, 42 months. September 22nd, 2017 is the date. So let's go to our little calculator. Here's our calculator. So from 9/22/2017, we subtract 1,260 days. And the answer is 4 days ago. Dang it! I thought this would be an empty auditorium tonight. So, what's wrong? So, everything I said made sense. And it was crazy accurate. It was biblical, and it was wrong. Now, we can do what everybody's doing now, who have predicted that Jesus would already come. We can correct our predictions. So, let's move the rapture, to a mid-trib rapture. And Finto actually agrees with this as well. And that is, we will go through the tribulation. We will not go through the wrath of God. And everything switches in Revelation 14, where wars and things happen in the earth that man causes. And in Revelation 14, God starts pouring his wrath out. Boom, boom. So now if we make it the rapture in 2017, we have a little time. Right? But the tribulation actually started the 10th of April. So if the tribulation started the 10th of April, that means that what we can expect in the next 3.5 years, as the white horse and the gray horse and the red horse and they all start to come, we can expect conquering. Somebody's going to go conquering. We can expect fairly widespread war to take place. Or, if you're a Middle East end times person, then everything is about Israel in the Middle East. It's not necessarily worldwide, unless God says it's worldwide. And we can expect famine. Widespread famine to take place in the next 3.5 years. If you start seeing those things happen, I would think back to tonight and go, okay. Right? Because it's not like a door slams and the tribulation starts and they start pulling you out of houses and shooting you. It's going to start here and there, and it's going to gain. Because if it was bam like that, everybody would know Jesus was coming, and they'd get saved whether they wanted to or not, just to save their hide. Okay? And so see, Jesus said, I am coming at a time when you don't expect it. Do you expect it right now? No. And so, I guess if we always expect it, he'll never come. I don't know if that works that way. It's like, when we were young believers, that scripture that said, eye is not seen, ear is not heard, nor is it entered into the heart of man, the things he has saved up for us. So we would tell the biggest whoppers about heaven we could come up with, knowing he'd have to outdo it. I mean, so we just thought, okay, God, we're gonna push you on out there, because we're gonna. So I was gonna be in charge of a whole galaxy. That's where we ended up. Okay, so what we have are a number of theories about the end times and about the blood moons and about all that. Okay, so now let me put on my science hat, and let's try to right size from a science perspective what these blood moons are about. Okay, we'll just so what I want to do is get you all riled up about the end times, then have you go, wait, whoa, that was 3 days ago. Okay. With you. Okay, I'm absolutely messing with you, but I have a real purpose in messing with you. Okay, so here's the blood moon tetrad, and let's talk about how the moon orbits the Earth. So the moon, every 29 and a half days, it actually could do it in 27.3 if the Earth wouldn't keep moving, but it's got to catch up. So there's a full moon, a new moon. A full moon is ours when the moon is away from us. Another full moon, another new moon, another full moon. So from full moon to full moon is about 30 days, right? From full moon to new moon is 15 days, right? Because the moon goes around the Earth in 30 days, so it starts on the outside. When it's on the outside of the Earth, away from the sun, then the sun is shooting over our shoulders at the moon, and we see a full moon. When the moon is near the sun, then all we see is the dark side of the moon, or a little sliver, because the sun is behind the moon, and the moon's shadow is toward us, okay? And so, now get this, every 30 days there is a full moon. Every 30 days. Every 30 days or 15 days after that, there's a new moon, okay? All the time. Since creation. Okay, this is the actual relative size and distance of the Earth and the moon. So if the sun is projecting, so there's the Earth and there's the moon. So that's scaled to the right size. Okay, so the pictures you see is like the moon is like, you could reach out and touch it. Hits your eye like a big pizza pie. That's more, right. Okay, well, it's really pretty small and pretty far away. And so the shadow from the Earth goes like that. But what happens is that the moon is on a wiggly orbit around the Earth. And so the moon goes in and out of the shadow, and so only some full moons is it in the shadow, like one every 6 months. Okay? Because every other planet, now God set this up, okay, so you can see the moon wiggling. Every other moon in the solar system goes around the equator of the planet, except our moon. Our moon doesn't go around our equator. It goes in what's called the ecliptic. It goes on the same path that the planets and the sun go on. And so as the Earth tilts, you know, the Earth is tilted, right? So the equator is this way and the sun is that way. So the moon wiggles up and down on the Earth as it goes around, because the ecliptic, or the path of the planets, wiggles up and down. The zodiac wiggles up and down. So everything's wiggling, and so the shadow of the Earth doesn't catch it all the time. So every 6 months, 6 lunar months, which is 30 days times 6, 180 days, there will be the potential of a full eclipse or a blood moon. There were 228 eclipses this century, every 6 months for 100 years. A little less than that because it's 30 days and months are, okay? So if you say, is a blood moon really rare? The answer is, heck no. Every 6 months there's a blood moon. Every 6 months, like clockwork, there is a blood moon. Every 6 months. But wait, there's more. There have been 87 tetrads since the birth of Christ. 9 of those tetrads occurred on Passover, Tabernacles. Passover, 9 of them did. We conveniently are only talking about the last 3 plus this one. So all the people who are talking about it's sign of Israel, now I'm talking like a science guy now, They're ignoring the fact that there was 7 other ones that nothing happened in Israel. There were blood moons, and they happened on Passover, Passover, and nothing happened. So what? Is it a coincidence? Right? So science people are going, God, those nutso charismatics. I mean, they must homeschool their kids and never teach science. I mean, they kind of have that. So there's that sort of mocking attitude because they say, look, there have been 87 tetrads. 9 of them are like the kind you're talking about. So what's the big deal? The other thing is this. The Jews have a lunar calendar. It's actually called a lunisolar calendar. Jewish feast days always happen on the 1st of the lunar month and the 15th of the lunar month. Okay? So Passover is always on a full moon. Always. By definition. Tabernacles is always on a full moon. By definition. So, if every 6 months you have a full moon, and Tabernacles and Passover always happen on a full moon, or every 6 months you have a blood moon, and these always happen 6 months apart. It's like 6 months you have Passover, 6 months Tabernacles, 6 lunar months Passover, 6 lunar months Tabernacles. And then because there's a couple of years, every couple of years they add a month because they start getting out of sync with the barley harvest, okay? So think about this now. There is a blood moon every 6 months. The feasts of Israel happen on full moons. So there will be a blood moon on a feast of Israel every 6 months. So when we... Oh, wait, there's more. Those big 3 that they're talking about is actually more than a tetrad. There's actually, in the first one, it actually happens 6 times in a row. There's an eclipse. In the next 2, it actually happens 7 times in a row. But they're only picking the 4 where it's a full blood moon. See, so this is science. Science is again, you're like cherry picking data to make a point. What's up with that, you guys? I mean, look, come on, it's not such a big deal. And so here are the kinds of eclipses. So if you see that, so there's 3 kinds. The moon just goes through the outer shadow. I know the sign because you're starting to yawn. So stay with me. Come on, stay with me. Breathe with me. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm saying this is what a scientist would say to us. He would say, well, so let's look at our own personal tetrad. They're 6 months apart. So if the first one happens on a blood moon, then there will be, the blood moons happen every 6 months. Well, it's got to fall on the Feast of Israel because it happens every 6 months and the Feasts of Israel are 6 months apart. So if A equals B and B equals C, it can't but help. It's got to happen. Okay? And so science people are over here saying, look, you're going to have a blood moon every 6 months and they're full blood moons, total eclipses, not that often because everything wiggles. But when they are, they're going to fall on feast days. Okay? That's just the way it is. Okay? So if the first one falls on a feast day, all the rest of them will too, because the feast days and the blood moons are both spaced 6 months apart. So it's not a miracle. It's the fact that the Jews God set up a lunar calendar. And they're following a lunar calendar. Except you go, yeah, but wait, God set up the lunar calendar. And so God... So science, you can tell me what will happen. You can't tell me why it will happen. Right? I mean, so scientists would say, no, Jesus he won't be born because Venus and Jupiter line up, and that's just science. And see, and so you have this seer and scientist conflict going on. Because everything they're saying is exactly right. They just can't interpret it. But I'm not sure we can either. Okay? I mean, it's like, so lunar eclipses are always on a full moon. So they're spaced 6 lunar months apart. Israel feasts are spaced 6 months apart. Passover and Tabernacles are always on a full moon, spaced 6 months apart. So as a scientist, I'd say the chance of a tetrad falling in the feast is good. It's probably just chance. Go out and enjoy the glory of the heavens and stop this nonsense. Okay? So that's what a scientist would say. A seer might say, God is still going to use the heavens to alert us, no matter how obscure and no matter how hard to understand. I want to be expectant, not misled. I don't want to be knee-jerk. I want to discern his story in the heavens, not just his glory in the heavens, right? And so there's this, right? So you see the conflict then going on? Okay, is there more we should think about this whole subject? So let's step outside of the blood moons for a second. Okay, now this is going to be mind-blowing. Let's talk about God saying there will be a season of the end times. No man knows the day or the hour, but then he says, you better know the season. When you see the fig tree, you know. So when you see these, so he's saying, look, you should be noticing stuff when it happens. So I started doing something called trajectories, and you don't have to read that. I just want it to be impressive, okay? So I pulled out everything I could find in Scripture that you could actually monitor in real time. And so for the last couple of years, I've been looking at the trajectories of data. Just to see. Because he says it's like the birth pangs of a woman. How many of you have had a baby? Okay, so the birth pangs increase in intensity and closer together. So we can expect these things to increase in intensity and closer together until the birth, right? Until it comes. And so let's just look at a couple. So here's earthquakes. Now, people say, well, of course there's more earthquakes today because they can measure them better. So I only took ones they could measure all the way back to 1900, Richter scale 6 earthquakes. So this is true data. So this is earthquakes. 1967, it just takes off. It goes north. Okay? Also, they have discovered a new kind of earthquake is taking place. It's called a horizontal fault earthquake, where instead of the two things and it uplifts this way, they crash together and the backsides of them have earthquakes. And so there are places now having Richter scale 6 earthquakes that have never had earthquakes before. The word diverse places means unexpected places. Okay? So we're seeing that. The roaring of the waves. This is an MIT guy plotting the ability of the oceans to destroy things on the shore. And this is over time, from 1940 till 2010. And look, it takes off in about 1967, 1970. And all of a sudden, and this is MIT. This is MIT saying, look, we better quit talking about sustainability on the coast and start talking about resiliency. Because Katrina was just the first blow. It is going to get bad. And so people are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to protect ourselves from the waves. So if Jesus says people will be astonished at the roaring of the waves, and in my business, there's 15 conferences this year about the roaring of the waves. And 5 years ago, there was 0. So you start going, huh. Okay? You just go, huh. Right? Okay, so I'm a scientist. I'm going, huh. So here's another one. This is insurance. Munich RE is someone who helps actuaries figure out insurance rates for home insurance. They're saying, look, this is the number of events of storms, floods, extreme temperatures, forest fires. And again, you see it just, and if you go back past 1980, it's flat. It's flat all the way back. And it takes off. And you go, okay, so things are heating up. I mean, it just can't keep going up like that, right? So here's another one. We think the temple needs to. Now, some of you know a lot more about this than me, but I've been sort of tracking news stories, and when you look for something, you can find it, right? You can throw a dart on a calendar, and there will be history in Israel on that date. Okay, so I mean, it's like, there's just way too much history there. But I thought this was interesting. It's kind of on the same day. So there's priests preparing for the temple service because they know it's coming. And you have Iran's military chief says, we are poised for attack. This was Last month. Well, yeah, February 12th. He said, we are poised for attack. We're ready. So Israel's doing preemptive attacks. And so what we're looking for, what Israel has always had, is an honest pretext to retaliate. Right? They didn't start the 48 war. They didn't start the 67 war. But they're going to win no matter who starts. Right? And they're going to end up with the temple. Right? And so you're looking and you're saying, okay, this wasn't in the headlines 10 years ago. It is now. And so you just gone, huh. Okay? So everybody's just go, huh, okay. Okay, good. Famine. How can there be widespread famine? We can grow more crops than you can imagine, except for the fact that we're creating a monoculture. And nations are all eating the same thing. Soybeans, wheat, corn. If we get any sort of crop failure or a blight or something that hits those three, there will be widespread famine across the whole earth like you've never seen it before. Because there's no diversity anymore. Right? There'd be a little famine here and these people could help. A little famine here, these people could help. But thanks to Cargill, if there's a corn famine, it will be worldwide. If there's a soybean famine, millions will die. Okay, and this is an NPR story. This guy is just saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. This is going to be disastrous. Mark of the beast. It is already here. This is called radio frequency identification. It is now mandatory in about a third of the passports. They have chips in the passport. There's Japan's. It's got that mark on it, this mark right here. Okay? They can inject them. There are people now who go to nightclubs in Berlin and they have a chip injected in them and they just charge all their drinks on the chip. Military people can have an option of getting a chip injected with all their medical data. In India, there was so much fraud in the food distribution system that a technocrat stepped in and said, I know how to stop the fraud. 40% loss of food distribution in India. Let's give everybody a chip. You don't get food unless it's you. And you can't hack it that easily. It cut fraud to zero. You would be seen as an incredible wacko to oppose something like that. Look what it's done. Look how it's helped. It would have stopped the Malaysian terrorist attack on that airline if we'd had those. See, and so it's not that this will happen in secret. It will happen in the open because believers will be so marginalized that it won't matter what we say. Okay? And so it's happening on Samsung. The fingerprint is just a different kind of biometric. Okay? Why? Because fraud is so widespread. Credit card fraud and LifeLock and it's going to be more and more and more widespread, and the only way to stop it is through biometrics. Hopelessly archaic if you oppose that. That ancient religion. Are you people opposed to progress? I mean, really? Okay? So violence is growing, right? No, it started back down in 1990. I don't know. Was that when the Beatles' White Album? No, I don't know. What is it? And so you ask yourself, okay, so maybe the love of many isn't growing cold. Well, until you look at the divorce rate. And then you go, okay, so maybe there's a different statistic that talks about the love. And so you got to be careful with statistics too. But you can see the divorce rate, 1967. Interesting. Everything took off in 67. That maybe was the Beatles' White Album. But divorces in China taking off. Okay, so what do I mean? Let's assume, and I'm about 8 minutes from done. Let's assume that you are sort of convinced now. Okay? Let's assume that you're going, okay, I get the thing about the blood moons, and I get the balance. I get that you could be pretty embarrassed if you pick a date and then it passes, right? And so there are people on the internet now backpedaling like crazy. Oh, I never set a date. Well, I have this YouTube video where I didn't, and so but there's a lot of backpedaling going on. Okay? Let's assume that you're convinced, this is happening. So then the question is, what should you do about it? Okay, what should you do? If I knew or thought I knew that we were coming into a tribulation period that will be 3.5 years to 7 years, depending on what we believe, what would I do? Option 1, guns. Option 2, bunkers. Option 3, food storage. So this is what, and I was in a well-known large church in this community where these were the options when they were talking about the end times. This was the discussion that they were having. And I was like, are you kidding me? You've got to be nuts. But what are our other options? Well, here's the deal. Jesus already told us. See, the disciples asked him, what will be the sign of your coming? He goes, okay, I'll tell you. And he tells them the signs. It's not a parable. He tells them the signs. And when he's done telling them the signs, he goes, okay, now this is what I really want to say. And he tells them 3 parables. And those 3 parables are his answer to what you should do if you think the end times is coming. Parable number 1, the talents. Remember, he gives talents. One buries his talent. Everybody else takes their talent and fearlessly invests them in the kingdom. One guy buries his talent. And God says to him, you worthless servant. What were you afraid of? I was afraid of you. And God goes, what? You are out of here. So option 1 is, each of you has been given a gift by God, a talent. Something in your life that you're really good at. The first thing you should do is invest it fearlessly. Right? Live fearlessly. Look for opportunities. Every day is an Easter egg hunt. I was in Atlanta last night. This woman comes up asking for money. I said, $10 is a cheap ticket for me to be able to share the Lord with you. I said, tell me about it. And we get talking. And she's wanting the money. And I'm like, so tell me more about, And she just wants, and I'm like, you're pregnant and, you need to go to shelter. But we need to talk a little bit because I know that your crew's right around the corner. And, so we're going to. And so, so that was an opportunity. So always be looking. Invest your talent. Number 2, the 10 virgins. Did you know that all 10 fell asleep? It's not like 5 were awake. They were all asleep. But 5 of them stayed full of oil. Even though they were asleep concerning the return of the king, they were not asleep concerning being filled with oil. And so to me, what God is saying is, if you will stay filled with the oil of the Holy Spirit, the reality of the presence of God, then no matter when I come, whether early or late, you're good. I'm going to invite you in. So stay. Don't let your oil drain away and just have a lamp with nothing in it. Okay? Here's the third one. The steward. He says, who then is the faithful, sensible slave whom his master will put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that slave when the master finds so doing when he comes. What he's saying, I think, is this. He's saying, each of us have been given some abundance, whether it's an abundance of time, abundance of health, abundance of money. And he says, give away what you've been given. At the proper time. I'll show you who to give it to. I'll show you when to give it. Okay, now, let me ask you, are there any of those 3 things there that you wouldn't just do anyway? I mean, this is how we live as believers. And what I think Jesus is saying is, just live as a believer. As a vibrant believer, fearless in the use of your gift, full of the Holy Spirit, generous to a fault with what you've been given. And if you do that, and if you get martyred, you're in heaven. If you're alive when I come, you're in heaven. There's just no bad option for me. And none of those things have anything to do with understanding the day he's coming. They don't even have much to do with being able to explain the blood moons. They really have to do with keeping our eye on the ball and being salt and light where we are. And so Jesus says, look, if you want to be totally positioned for my coming, it's not because you have special revelation. It's because you have a special heart. You have a special Holy Spirit. You have a special Lord and Savior. And if you'll just live like that, look, the one who's going to die by the sword is going to die by the sword. If you're in a bunker and you're going to die, okay? You're not going to save yourself. He who tries to save his life will lose his life. But if you give up your life for my sake, whether you're alive or whether you're under the altar in the sea of glass going, how long, O Lord? You're in. And you got a robe and a horse and a kingdom and a new Jerusalem and 1,000-year reign. And, I told my wife, yeah, you could be like in charge of 10 cities. And she said, could I? That sounds like hard work to me. Could I just do art in the 10 cities with that? With that. So you see what I'm saying? So basically, Jesus says this. He says, when you see these things begin to take place, don't hide, don't run, straighten up, look up and go, Maranatha. Come, Lord Jesus. And as long as you're looking up, enjoy the glory of the heavens. As long as you're straightened up, looking up, enjoy the glory of the heavens. So that's the message I wanted to bring to you. Is, there's all this science and all this stuff, and I can conjure up some great theories about the return of Christ. But really, I want to focus on those three things. The other things are a fun hobby, but they're not life. Those three things are life. And so that's really the thing I wanted to give to you. And this is actually how eclipses occur, I think. I think Jesus just goes out and goes, hey, watch this. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you so much. I'll be around for questions. And I appreciate you all being here.